Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to talk about growing revenue, which is huge for all firms and hopefully an area of focus that people are looking at and how they can do it. So I'm really excited about the topic. Let's go through a couple business things first from an administrative standpoint. So today we do get one CPE credit offered for the session and you do attend all 50 minutes. We'll have 3 polling questions. Our rule, you do have to answer all 3 of those polling questions. So please watch for those. They'll be somewhat random throughout. We will go ahead and email those certificates in the next week for people who do that. You'll also get the presentation. We really like people to use the question function. So you don't have the ability to talk to us during the session, that's turned off. So the question's the best function, and we'll do as much as we can reading those during the session and get them answered. We also have a Slack channel with the CFO community that I'll talk about a little bit. Hopefully people are part of that, but that's another place that we answer questions in those. And I already mentioned that we're going to email slides and everything else to you. I'm Tom Wadelton. I'm one of the virtual CFOs full-time at Summit CPA Group. So part of the role is facilitating this. My usual job is working directly with clients, doing financial forecasting, guiding them as their CFO in there. So tell you a little bit about Summit CPA Group. So I mentioned the CFO service. Since 2004, we've been providing these CFO and back office services to our clients. Back in 2013, we went to be fully distributed. So all of our employees are remote workers. We've really appreciated the flexibility that gives us, both with employees across the country and outside the US, and the same with clients. And so we meet with all of our clients, 100% of it is virtual. Retreats and things like that, we may meet with them in person, but all of our ongoing activities is usually through a Zoom kind of medium. And we have 55 employees throughout the world. So that's a little bit about Summit CPA Group, a little bit about our speakers today. So we've got 2 speakers. Stephen Pope is the founder and CEO of SGP Labs. He's going to be going through a lot of the presentation, and then our own Kelly is our director of marketing at Summit CPA Group. And so we do a lot of the practices that Stephen will talk about and marketing efforts. So welcome to both of you. Should we talk about growing the revenue of firms and others?
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into it. Super excited to be here. Really appreciate everybody that took the time to come. Beyond helping people with video, I really just like helping entrepreneurs build their business. So I'm excited to dig into that. So we all want to grow our firms. We all want to grow revenue. We all want to charge what we're worth, and we all want to get clients easier. And in this presentation, I want to just to illustrate. Here's an image of my Gmail where I'm booking calls from people that find me on LinkedIn and YouTube, and I've been booking a new client almost every week recently. So I really just wanted to start here just to kind of show you, where you could be if you are executing on these video strategies, content marketing strategies well. And I think what's also interesting about these particular calls that I get is that they're usually people that have seen me quite a bit. They know what I'm all about. They're almost ready to engage in the services well before they even call. And so you don't end up wasting a lot of time with people that aren't really going to be a good fit, which I think is just pretty awesome. And so we all know the grind of growing professional service firms. It's really hard to meet new clients. Often we're trying to meet new clients through professional networking groups. So you're not even actually talking to the people that you want to be talking to. You're kind of relying on referrals. It's definitely hard to stand out. I know we are all different, but it's pretty hard to convey that in today's world, especially even just like through your website. We think a good design or a good tagline is going to make us stand out, but realistically, it's hard to do that because everyone is starting to look the same. And the other thing as well is in professional services, it requires a lot of, if you're not doing any type of inbound marketing, you're always trying to do outbound marketing, and it takes a lot of time. It's hard to scale. So if you have a lot of people on the ground like rainmakers, it just ends up, it's just not a scalable approach because people can't get that much business that way. And the other thing that you may not be aware about is that 80% of people prefer to learn about a company through custom content. And for those that aren't creating content, you definitely are losing clients to people that are. And that's really where video can come in, is that allows you to build that trusted brand. It allows you to increase the word of mouth. And I don't mean just with like the people that you know, but for instance, I do a lot of marketing on LinkedIn, and I'll end up getting in contact with somebody that says, hey, Steve, I was talking to somebody else. And so this isn't even like my immediate network. So there's actually people talking about what I'm doing on LinkedIn, which I think is pretty amazing. And you can also have clients reaching out to contact you. So, but the challenge is, none of us want to waste time. We don't want to waste our money. We don't want to look bad getting on video. We don't want to put ourselves out there and look bad. And marketing.
Would you mind if I go ahead and launch a poll question, and then you can continue?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. And then a lot of people, and a lot of people are quite overwhelmed with marketing and getting on video. So, but that doesn't have to be the case. So, when I first started doing the getting on video, it was super stressful for me. But looking forward a year since then, I've been able to get on camera and actually start to generate business. And let's see, looking for that next slide here. I guess we'll give people
just about 10 more seconds. Yeah,
cool.
For that. So if you haven't voted, get it in quickly. We've got a couple more who need to get their votes in.
Looks like we've got the majority in the 2 to 10 range.
Yep. And about 20% in the one. Okay, so you should be back to your screen.
Let me.
Did it go away?
I just have to, whenever it goes full screen, I have to
okay.
figure out. All right. It still shows.
Yeah, it's showing the poll.
Make sure it comes back to you. There we go. You've got the challenge.
Okay,
slide
cool.
back up now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So basically, what I was just saying, it doesn't really have to be so hard. Here's my first video that I did on LinkedIn. Super stressed out, but fast forward a year later, I'm generating business and working with a bunch of clients, including Summit, to help them with their execute their video strategy. And that's what I'm going to do in this hour here, is really try to give you some actionable advice, really trying to get into the weeds on how I help clients to help you use video.
Do you know approximately, you mentioned that being your first, do you know approximately how many LinkedIn videos you've done?
How many? Oh man.
Two main account.
A lot. And not only LinkedIn videos, but podcast videos, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So you must have figured out a way to make it pretty easy if you're able to do them frequently.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the main things that we'll kind of cover today. Is it's always a little bit stressful starting some of these things, but there are ways to make it easier. And that's where I have fun, is helping people kind of accelerate that process. And then here's just an example, if you're doing this stuff right, like what can happen. So these are just posts, or these are messages that I'm getting directly from LinkedIn. They're not even booking a call through my website. They're just finding me on LinkedIn and sending me messages, and I'm able to arrange calls with them right like that, which I think is pretty cool. So how do we get there? Everything, every good execution starts with a good creative strategy. And when I think of strategy, I'm always thinking, okay, how do we leverage our time, our money, our effort to get the best result? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can craft that strategy in this call. And then you also have to be creating engaging and shareable video, stuff that people are interested in watching, stuff that they will likely share. And then the final piece of doing effective content marketing is being efficient and effective with everything that you're doing. So kind of to start out on the strategy, most of the time I start with trying to help firms, consultants, whoever that is, come up with some way of creating ongoing video content that we can later repurpose. And I'll get into a lot of that later. But what's fun is that there's usually something for somebody, and everyone's a little bit different. Their personalities are different. How they like to communicate is different. So I usually sit down with them and help them think through what type of ongoing video can we do that's going to be effective for you and comfortable for you, so that you can be consistent at it, because it is being consistent is one of the most important parts. So there's obviously workshops, webinars. Those are great. That just like what we're doing now, you can give very targeted information, and people know exactly what they're going to get, and you can deliver that value, and people walk away feeling like, yeah, that was great. I was glad I saw that. And so you're able to demonstrate your skills very easily. You're also able to test in the marketplace like what people want. You know, you can put out a message on or a post on LinkedIn saying, hey, I'm going to run this webinar, and based off of how many people sign up, you can get a gauge very quickly of how interested people are in that type of content, so you don't waste too much time on content that people don't like. The drawback is you're always having to come up with a presentation. So I spent several hours, putting this together, making it look nice. Some at CPA helped me do as well. They came in and put in the nice icon. So it takes time to do this. So if you're doing this on a weekly basis or every other week, it can be challenging. You can obviously do short videos. That's what I started off doing a lot of. Those are great as well. You're giving very specific information again, but those are harder to repurpose because they're usually a bit shorter, and you're always having to create small videos. So there's some advantages and disadvantages there. We talked about webinars. Podcasting is one of the best options, mostly because it's very low pressure. So it's really cool that you can go out and just have somebody on your show and spend an hour with them, talking with them, exploring different topics, talking about the things that your potential clients or the professionals in your network are interested in. And it's a great way to create ongoing content without having to prep a lot. All you have to really do is decide who's going to be on your show, come up with some questions that you want to have answered, and then get into it. You can also use this very strategically in terms of reaching out to people. So when you think about outbound marketing, sometimes it's very hard to just email somebody and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about my services, because people just don't like that approach. But if you have an ideal client that you really want to get in contact with and learn more about, it's a great way to reach out to somebody to say, hey, come on my show and let's talk. I'd love to hear your story. And now you're having a very low pressure conversation with somebody that could very easily become a client, and they get to learn about you throughout that discussion. And not to mention, other than that, you can have very popular people in the industry come on your show, and then after the show, you can share the video with them. You can give them resources. You can make little clips out of the podcast and give those to them. And then they can share those with their network as well. And it's a great way to get exposure into other networks. So that's kind of what I mean when I think about thinking strategically about the type of video that you're going to create. Because now in a podcast, not only are you creating video that you can then use to show who you are and push to social media, but you can also be using it to strategically reach out to new people and share your content throughout the internet.
Yeah, Steve, that comment about we have clients on our webinar and podcast, or on the podcast that we do. And I was a little surprised when we asked clients, initially felt like I was asking them for a favor and they might not want to, and they were totally into it. And some did say, yes, can I have this? Because this is something that I can share with others that I don't think we expected.
Yeah, and on that point, I think one of a good strategy is to always think about what's in it for the guest. So when I invite somebody on the show, I'm always saying, hey, I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to get your story out there. I'd love to hear more about you. I'll publish this, bring exposure to you. I will also give you resources to help you promote your own company. And sometimes just having them on the show is enough. But if it's somebody popular, thinking about thinking strategically about how you're going to invite them and make it worth their while is an important thing. But that's a great point.
Yeah, good idea.
So when we think about strategy, I often think about thought leadership content. This is where you're out in the world, paving the way for other people to take advantage of the insights that you have. You're peeking around the corner, identifying risks and opportunities, and bringing those back to people so that they can take advantage of them. So one of the main things I do in the very beginning is think very carefully about what is that content strategy. And let me show you how I actually help clients walk through some of this stuff. So this is just like a form that it's like a checklist that I go through to make sure that we're thinking properly about how we're going to deliver this information. Because a lot of the times when people get on video, the first thing they do is they just want to get on video, but they're not thinking carefully about what is going to make somebody care about this piece of video. So you can create 20 videos that just nobody cares to watch. So these little things that you do in the beginning to inform your strategy are going to be the things that actually make the difference in terms of whether the video is successful or not. So I usually go through this little questionnaire, thinking about like who is the primary audience. For most of us, that's just like who we want to do business with. So, if you're a CPA, accountant, a virtual CFO, obviously you want clients. So you have to think carefully about where they want to go. And initially we all start thinking about that from like our perspective, but it is important to really understand our clients well, speak to them and ask them like, where do you want to go? So when you're creating content, you're thinking about your primary audience, and most business owners, they want a successful business. They might want, time with their family. They might not want to waste money. So thinking about these things that they really want is important to inform your strategy. So as you're creating content, you're bridging that gap, and then you can think through various content categories that you might speak about. And this is the one where I spend a little bit of time and help people think creatively about this, because what I do notice about a lot of CPAs and accountants, specifically when I see them on LinkedIn, it's just for those that are posting content, a lot of it is just ongoing like tax advice over and over and over again. And just speaking from somebody that's on the other side, that's not going to be something that I want to see every day. And I'm not saying that there aren't other business owners that might want that, but that isn't something that I wake up every morning and think about. So, just one example is like most of the people that are running these firms, like a CPAs, they're entrepreneurs as well. Summit CPA, for instance, has built a large business, so they have a lot of expertise in building businesses. And how do you hire people? How do you scale a business? A lot of these people work in specific industries, so they work with manufacturers. So you're working with companies that you're learning like how these companies do manufacturing. Sure. So you can talk a lot about other things that would draw someone like me in. Like I'm a consultant, so if you had very specific information for consultants, then that kind of bridges the gap and draws me in versus just like talking about like how to do my home office deduction and stuff like that.
Yeah, some of those things are they may be necessary or timely, right now around tax season. Maybe you're giving tax tips, but right. It is, if you're an accountant or a CPA firm trying to launch virtual CFO services or trying to kind of grow that part of your practice, when you position yourselves as the experts in tax, it's hard to get out of that. Like if you're positioning yourself as the expert in helping manufacturing companies grow or or understand their financials, those kinds of things, it positions you differently than if you're just always talking about tax. That's how you're seen as the person who does the tax. We're actually very mindful about not talking about tax, tax subjects very often, because that's not the primary service that we sell.
Right, exactly.
Now's probably a good time for the second poll question. And Steve, you talked about different kinds of things that you could do and even repurposing. So this question gets to sort of what type of content do people create currently? So if people answer this, we'll get some idea of kind of what our audience is doing currently.
Yep. And then I'll just kind of continue forward here.
Sure.
And the other thing to think about too is like, who's the secondary audience? So who are the other people in your network that could benefit from your content? So, you know, if you're a CPA or an accountant or a virtual CFO, you know, you're probably likely interacting with financial advisors, lawyers. What kind of content could you create for them as a resource that they could share with their clients that would give exposure to what you do? And so that's a great way. It's like if I've seen people create like a really cool, you know, spreadsheet or just some resource that they can give to somebody, and you have your logo on it, and that ends up bringing business.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, and then also strategic partnerships. So who out there in the industry is serving the same people you are? So a good example for me is like Summit CPA. So we share a common audience. We do different things, but we can strategically work together. I can help them, they can help me, and I can come on and do a webinar, provide some value for their audience. And so you create these strategic partnerships with people where it's like basically a win-win, and you can get introduced to new marketplaces, and you can bridge communities together essentially.
Okay. I just closed the poll, so yep, now we're seeing your web again.
Cool. Yeah,
so for that, about a little bit less than a third said that they're currently doing blog posts, and then 18% had video and workshops, webinars, and podcasts, and then 40% said none of the above. So it sounds like you're talking to an audience, right, for learning and starting to do something.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great numbers, actually. All right, so then the next question really is to ask yourself is like, where are you going to distribute this content? And this is critical. You have to think carefully about like, where are your ideal clients hanging out? So if you're doing B2B, you know, LinkedIn is a great place. This is just where professionals are hanging out. This is where they're consuming content. This is where they're you know, messaging each other, you know. So, but in the end, you have to really think carefully about where your market hangs out. TikTok is an emerging marketplace. I know that most people think of that as for kids, where you see people dancing, but it's important to think about this. Is like every social platform starts off in one area, and then it grows into a different maturity over time. So if you think about LinkedIn, it used to be a job board, really. It's like that's where people would go to get jobs. Now it's where people go to do business. And TikTok is another. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we had a really great discussion yesterday in the CFO community. We have a marketing meetup once a month, and we were talking about that you know, people's perception of TikTok is that it's, you know, kids and people dancing, whatever, young people, but there's a billion people who are active users on TikTok. And I actually recommended your podcast episode, Stephen, where you talked to Elizabeth Pickle, who is a lawyer who's on the platform and just doing really cool things on the platform. So check out Stephen's YouTube because he does have that episode on YouTube, and it just kind of shows you the professional side of TikTok. On any platform, there's probably I don't know the numbers, but the majority of the people who are on there are people who are watching content, not necessarily people who are producing the content. It's hard to produce content. It's, you know, as many people here know, that's the work, but it's really easy to consume content. So there are those people who are there who are more than likely in your target audience who you wouldn't think are on that platform, but they are. And by putting that content out there, you start connecting with those people.
Yeah, and most definitely. And like, so, and on that note, like LinkedIn is still a great place to build your business. But if you want like an early opportunity, you're kind of adventurous, you like to take advantage of early opportunities, you know, TikTok is a great place. YouTube is still a great place. All of these platforms can be good if your customers are there. But it's important to think about that, because you in order for all this to work, people need to see your content. So you need to think a little bit strategically. It has to have an impact, and people have to see it. So it's just critical to think about this. The other thing that holds people back is equipment. And you don't have to overthink this. So to get started, all you really need is a good quality webcam. You know, $75 will get you one that's totally fine. Feel free, I'm going to give my email address at the end here too. Feel free to email me and I can give you guys lists of this equipment or any of the templates that I've kind of shared throughout this. But a good webcam, a phone, phones have incredible cameras in them. That's all you need to get started. A good mic for doing a podcast. This is the Yeti. It's like $120. And starting off with just some basic lighting. A lot of the time people think that their camera isn't very good quality, but it's often just because the lighting isn't good enough. So you got to fix the lighting first before you determine whether your equipment is not up to par. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is that in terms of execution, your videos have to be engaging, shareable. And the way you do that is by creating those aha moments, turning that light bulb in someone's head, and really having people walk away from whether they read your blog or they saw your video, and you want them to say, wow, I'm glad I saw that. And so real quick, I'll show you an exercise that I go through with clients. I won't go through this whole thing. This is a script I use for helping people do videos. But I always start with this. And I literally sit down. I don't do this formally anymore, but I did this for the first 50 to 75 videos that I did. I sat down and I wanted to say, wow, or I wanted my viewer to walk away saying, wow. So I would write out the statement. And so I would literally think to myself, and I'm saying this from the perspective of the person watching the video, is like, wow, after reading or viewing that content, I understand that taking this action or not taking this action will make my life better in this specific way. I now feel a lot better in this specific way. And this is the key. So we talk about all these different things, creating video, distributing them, but you can do all that work, but if you don't accomplish this goal, then it's all for nothing ultimately. And so when we talk about getting back to basics, this is one of the main things. And it's interesting too, is that when I work with clients and I give them this sheet, this is the section they always skip. They always go straight into writing the script, and I come in and I give them some feedback, and I noticed this section wasn't filled in. And this is the key, because this is like the topic sentence of your blog. It's like this is how you frame up in your own mind how you're going to deliver value to people in this video, and it makes all the difference in terms of getting your mind in the right perspective to really just make people say, wow, that was awesome. Thank you for showing me that. That's when somebody shares it. That's when they remember you. And those are the keys to making all of this successful.
That's a great tip. That's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so then the next thing is being efficient. So obviously creating video is time consuming. So how can we make this more efficient? We don't want to be spending, we're all busy. I'm busy. I've got clients to serve. You've got clients to serve. We can't be creating videos every day, individual videos, all that kind of stuff. So how do we become really efficient with our content creation? And that's why this, using long form content that you can break into various other types of media is critical. So and Kelly, you can chime in to talk about how you guys do stuff as well. But you can take that 1 hour podcast, you can go into it. Usually you can find at least 3 to 4 little videos that you can create, right? And then you can also take the audio from that video and you can create your podcast. And then you can also find interesting ways of creating images or slide decks. If you've seen those on LinkedIn, you can take the transcript from your blog and you can post that on your website. You can post the video onto YouTube, and then you can embed the video from YouTube on your website. You can turn the transcriptions into blogs, and you can inform those blogs by an SEO strategy. So there are there are strategies and workflows that will allow you to turn that 1 hour of video into daily content, as long as you're kind of thinking about this strategically. And let me show you a really cool program. Not to say that you have to use, as the business owner, that you have to do this yourself, but I just wanted to show how easy this can be. So here's one of my podcasts. To get it in here, I can't remember. You basically just drag the video in here. It does a complete transcription. It figures out who the different voices are. And then not only that, but I can, if I find a clip that I think is interesting, I can just select this text here, and I can just say, make a new clip to make a new clip. And now that video is right here. So I just created a little video from that long form content. Yeah. And it's completely transcribed, and I can come up here and I can go to share, export, and I can export it in all these different ways. I can push it to YouTube. I can export it as a video. I can make a GIF out of it. So I'm not showing you this so that you feel like you have to do this as the business owner, but I wanted to show you how technology is making all of this stuff more approachable and easier. So you could have.
What program is that, Stephen?
This is Descript.
Oh, that's Descript. Okay.
Yeah. And then not only that, but you can very easily update this text here. I won't go into all the details, but you can actually formulate the blog right from here. And it's very easy to take out the ums and the ahs and all that kind of stuff to really, tighten up the video. But I wanted to show this as an example to show you how easy this stuff is compared to the way you might be thinking about it. So the opportunity is just investigating some of these things. And a lot of the time I think of content marketing as a performance sport. So if you know these tips and tricks, you can produce a lot more content and look really mighty when you might be a small firm.
Yeah, this does look really easy. For the transcription, do you find that it's pretty accurate, or do you end up spending a fair amount of time correcting?
It's very accurate, actually. You will spend a little bit of time, but if you have somebody on staff that can, it's like you can go through it and correct it pretty easily, or you can just take that and kind of formulate a blog out of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of this is when you do pick a platform, is using it effectively. So sometimes I run into people that they're trying to do Facebook, they're trying to do LinkedIn, they're trying to do YouTube, they're trying to do TikTok or whatever. They're trying to do too much, and they're not actually performing well on the platform itself. So you have your strategy, you've come up with the video, you've decided where to do it. Now when you're actually delivering this content to the platforms, you do need to be cognizant of how to deliver content on these platforms. Because what I will say is I see a lot of times, especially in the financial industry, financial advisors, CPAs, they're posting content daily, but they're often just linking to external articles, stuff that, it's like if I go to LinkedIn, I'm not really going there to go to your website. So I usually most people just skip by that stuff. So you're not delivering the content in the format that people are expecting it, and therefore people don't actually engage with it. So just to kind of give you an example of that real quick, let me show you my feed here. So I post daily, and you can see that even just as of this morning, I'm getting some good engagement on my posts on a daily basis. And so here's an example of one of the Kelly was talking about this, podcast. So here's an example where I made a small clip, and you can see that there's real engagement happening. And if I dig into these posts, there's real comments. There's people asking me questions. They're engaging with me. So I've gone through all the steps to be meticulous about building the strategy, getting those aha moments, and then learning how the platform works a bit so that when I post content, it's actually effective. Here's a little bit of personal content. So if thinking back to the content strategy, I have a little bit of personal stuff in there. People actually like that. You can see that the personal content had a lot of views on it compared to the business content. So that's interesting, right? So you think about building awareness you think about your strategy, that the personal content can have a little bit more reach. People can remember who you are, and then when they see the business content come through, they might have recognized me from, oh, he did that other post about a car computer, and now they might pay a little bit more attention to the business content that I have. And then as well, just like a little thing is like, I've got this color behind my face, and that helps me stand out a little bit in the feed as well. So just the main point I'm making is, like, when you're delivering the content to these platforms, it has to be delivered in the format that platform is expecting, and they all have that. So on TikTok, it's the ratio, or the screen is different. So instead of things being more square, it's more rectangular, and so you have to deliver the content in such a way that people are going to consume that content.
Yeah, I think that's one of the were you going to do a poll question, Tom?
Nope, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think that's one of the most important things, is that it's important to understand the platform and the culture of the platform, and not just take a video from one and use it exactly as is on the other. I mean, obviously, if you're using those podcast videos, it's going to be the same video portion, but like you do, Stephen, you'll do side by side, those videos side by side. If it's square, if you're doing it for TikTok, you're going to put them on top of, top on bottom. So formatting it so that it fits in that platform. So like there, you can see they're side by side, and then the version that you would do on TikTok, you'll have them stacked. Or like one of the things that you taught us with our YouTube videos is, by branding the thumbnails, it starts to just build awareness on that platform. Like everything starts to look similar, everything looks branded. We use the same color schemes in our different podcasts, and that really makes them stand out on the platform as being made for YouTube, even though they're made for, the native file is the same, but we make them very specific for the platform in anything that we post in different places. And I think that's really important to understand the platform and the culture if you're going to put video in different places.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where people start to get overwhelmed. And so that's when I start to explain to them, it's like, okay, you have to start small. You have to pick a single platform.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be on, you don't necessarily have to be on Facebook, and because you'll see people are on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn, and they're not actually generating business from it. So better to focus on one platform, learn how it works.
Do it well.
Yeah. And the other thing to just mention is, you'll notice that the clip I took here is only 26 seconds. And I have a big banner here explaining what the advantage of, or what are you going to gain from watching my video, right? So that's very clear. If you're just kind of scrolling through the feed, this is going to stand out to you. It's made well. It's got it's saying what it's about, and then I'm going to deliver the content, the information to you quickly. I'm not going to make you wait for 5 minutes to get some little nugget of information. So,
yeah, Steve, we had a question for Dale asking about the name of the program, and I think it was the same one that Kelly asked. If people wanted to learn a little bit more about the different technologies, what would you suggest for, hey, I'm just starting to get into this, what are the different things that I need to be thinking about?
In terms of like,
I'm thinking of software. You mentioned some of the hardware already, but sort of as I come out of the gate, what should I be thinking of?
I think Descript is one of the best apps right now, because it allows you to make small clips. It allows you to make the transcription. It allows you to, it just allows you to do so many different little things. You can do, and again, like, to not overwhelm yourself, just pick one software and kind of get comfortable with it. And don't feel like you kind of have to be perfect before you move on.
Okay, that sounds like a good rule.
Effective.
Yep.
So, and then also prioritize your systems and your processes. So this is another spot where I tell people to, and I get it. People want results right away, and you can get results right away. I got a client the first week I was on LinkedIn, which I think is cool. But if you kind of understand where the world is going, social media is becoming bigger and bigger, There's always these new platforms coming out. And so where we're going is not going to change. So if you kind of believe where the world is going, yeah, it's like we're not going back. So getting this into your system, getting these processes into your these workflows into your company is the most important thing. Yeah, we want new clients next week. We all do. But what I tell people to is to really prioritize the systems and the processes, the workflows, the checklists, the software, the automation, the ownership. Like who owns the different roles in the company? Because if somebody doesn't own like a specific role in a company, like people just won't do it. So, and then training. What training do people need to do this successfully? So these are the things that I spend a lot of time with people on, because if you're not thinking about pulling these things into your company and doing it for the long term, then people usually forget. And if they don't have a workflow, or if they don't have a checklist to execute on these things on a regular basis, then things start to get left off, and you don't end up executing all the different things that you need to do in order to do this. And then there is a lot of software and automation to make this stuff easier. So we talk about making things efficient, and the software and the automation can do a great job at that. So I might even actually show you an example here. So here's a program that I use in particular called ClickUp, and this is where I kind of manage my checklists for my podcast. And so I just did a podcast with Jody, the CEO of Summit, but I've designed a checklist that allows me to just make sure that every time I do a podcast, I do the same thing. And there's a lot of things on this checklist, so this could seem a little overwhelming, but they're all little things. But they're all the things that make my content better than somebody else's, or my process better than someone else's, or more efficient. So I go into great detail, just like printing out my notes, clearing my desk, making sure the dogs are in. I know this sounds kind of silly, but these are the kind of things that just make the execution of this consistent. Making sure that I have a hardwired connection, setting up some software that I use to do the recording, and then even just like reminding myself what to do when the guest comes on. And this also, beyond just making things efficient, this also just makes the process better, easier for you, and it makes it more comfortable, and it makes the guest feel more comfortable. So you ask them, can I record this? Reminding yourself to close other tabs. And then what to do in terms of like the actual video production, creating thumbnails, post-production. I won't go through all of this stuff.
I think that stuff is super helpful though, because like you were saying, everyone's busy and you forget these kind of details when you're busy. Yeah. You're jumping right from one meeting to the next thing. You're trying to get this done. And this allows you to, you could do it as you're recording or whatever, but then it also helps you later to be able to go through and make sure that you caught all of the things that were supposed to get done. It just really helps, like you were saying, with consistency and efficiency, and just making sure you're covering all your bases.
Yeah, or if you get distracted, and you need to go do something else and come back. The other thing that I like to think about is like, so creating content can be hard. That's not a lie. It can be hard. So you want to make things as easy as possible, and you want to make sure that people aren't always having to think hard to execute on it, because the harder you make it, the less likely it is to get done. The easier you make it, the more likely it is for you to get it done. And then the other thing I do as well, I won't go into great depths with this, but I also keep track of all of the content that I've created. So this is a tool called Airtable. And one of the coolest things that I didn't set out to, I didn't set out when I first created this, but one of the advantages of this is that it keeps track of every single piece of content that I've ever created.
Wow.
And and it's really cool, because now I can always go back. I can see what was the successful content. I can repost certain things. So even when I run out of content because I'm just busy somewhere else, I just pop back in here. I published this 4 months ago. It did really well. I just republish it again. But you can only have that ability if you made the commitment to get started and to even build something like this out. So this is an asset that now I've produced in my company. This is a valuable asset that I've developed over the last year that just gives me a strong advantage over anybody else, because anytime I run out of content, I just pop back in here and I'm good to go. I can post 2-3 times a day if I wanted to, and I wouldn't actually even be creating new content.
I love that. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and do our last poll question. It talks about what holds you back from doing this, which just seems from doing video marketing. You've given a couple things of just get started and how to get started easy. So it'd be interesting if people think about what is it that's keeping them from doing, because we had 40% who said they weren't doing anything from blogs and video and webinar kind of stuff.
Awesome. And then
I'm interested to see what people say here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is time. Sorry, Stephen, go. Go for it.
No worries. The other thing I was going to mention too is that a lot of the time business owners are very focused on their websites. But one thing that's really interesting is that if you're publishing content on LinkedIn specifically, your profile page actually becomes a website. It becomes a sales page.
Yeah.
And so you can't see it on the slide right now because there's a poll on here, but I have a little image here showing like how many views my profile is getting. And I can track this almost like how much traffic does my website get? And I can do the same thing on my LinkedIn profile. How much actual traffic is my
your LinkedIn page getting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 10 seconds and I'll give you back your screen.
Well, I'm looking at some of these the poll results too, and I wanted to address a couple of things. So fear and imposter syndrome. So this is big, I think, for a lot of people. I had it as well. The best advice I've always been able to give about the fear and the imposter syndrome is to get outside of your own head, right? So most of it really just comes from insecurity. So the best thing that I've ever been able to do is to get outside my own head, visualize who I'm trying to help, do the articulation that I talked about earlier, which is like, wow, I'm glad I saw that. How can I make that happen in someone's head? How can I really help somebody? And the moment you start thinking about somebody else and how you're going to help them, I mean, obviously you'll flip back and forth. It doesn't happen overnight, but you stop thinking about yourself and why you're scared. You're now thinking, hey, I can really help somebody out here. And that helps a lot with the fear and the imposter syndrome because you're actually helping somebody.
I like
and the
that.
time thing, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's why the efficiency part of this is critical. So
yeah.
if you think about doing a video podcast once a week or once every other week, that's an hour of your time. And that can become the content that drives the entire, you can produce really rich content on a daily basis from that if you think creatively, if you kind of think outside the box. So that's the important part with time, is that it does take some time. So how can you maximize it? What are the systems and the processes you can put in place to overcome that? And I guarantee you there are ways, as long as you start to do it. So it takes time. You got to start small. You have to kind of layer these things in. But if you're committed to growing your business and kind of thinking into the future of like, where is the world going, you can keep that time under check. And then just in terms of the cost, I spend very little money on content. It's amazing. Aside from the equipment that I bought, which is actually very cheap, I haven't spent that much money on that. So the cost that I do is really my time, and that's where I'm trying to be the most efficient. So don't let cost be the thing that holds you back, because cameras, lighting, you can go to Amazon and buy all that stuff you need for a few $100. And then in terms of the benefits, all I can point to is the results that Summit has. They've grown a huge firm off of content. So that's a great example. I've got clients that have doubled the size of their firm I showed you the incoming requests, so the stuff works. Just to kind of prove it, it works. Here's a couple more incoming requests from people, and not only that, but it's nice to see, hey Stephen, Happy New Year, saved this post last week. It's interesting to see someone save my post, and they want to talk about my content. And besides, it's like you're helping people, and that's a great feeling. So a couple key points, outbound marketing really just doesn't scale. So if you want to build a big firm and you don't want to necessarily become a commodity, building a brand, getting out there is the way to do it. And then of course, consistency. So that's been a huge part of everything I've done. There have been times where I wanted to quit, but I knew I'm a forward-thinking person. I know where the world is going. So I committed and I kept consistent. And every time the world works in weird ways, but there were times where I wanted to stop and I didn't. And sometimes on that day or the next day that I did something really cool happened to reinforce the actions I was taking. And then just action over perfection. Almost, there are things that I didn't like about this presentation that I was doing. I was like insecure about this. There's always things I want to improve on my podcast. There's always things I want to improve, but I'm defaulting to taking action because you can never actually perfect anything until you take action.
That's a good point.
So kind of
Sheryl
wrapping up.
Sandberg's quote, "Done is better than perfect." That's my motto.
Yep.
That was weird.
Yeah, and if we waited to, especially being accountants, if we wait till we think it's close to perfect, we'll never.
Well,
You never release your very first one.
Yeah.
It was in there.
It's interesting. The slides for all of a sudden just aren't showing the content for me.
Yep.
There we go. So
perfect.
So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I really tried to get into the weeds and show you guys like how you can think about doing this. I wanted to make sure you guys could visualize yourselves doing some of these things. Again, my name is Stephen Pope. I'm the CEO and founder of SGP Labs. I do strategic video marketing and content coaching. I'm helping people set up video podcasts, helping them do short videos, webinars, even live shows. I didn't talk too much about that, but I'm about to put on my own live show on LinkedIn, which is real fun. And I even help people do documentaries. And I also help them think through micro content. So appreciate you.
Those all sound really good as I think of the last poll question of both. I'm not sure I had the time working. I assume working with you, they'll be able to figure out kind of what time is really required and how can I be efficient to maximize the time I do spend.
Yeah, because everyone's a little bit different. I have I have some clients who really dig into this and spend a lot of time on it because they're looking long term and they see the investments. Other people were really trying to just fit this in and get this working and get that going. So it really just depends on like who you are, where you're at, how much time you have. But yeah, we can make it take as little time as possible. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Stephen@sgplabs.com. If there was any resource that I displayed here, feel free to ask me for it. I could just share it with you. I can give you links to equipment. I love helping people, so feel totally comfortable just reaching out, and I can give you advice. We can even get on a call, and I can help you think things through, and no pressure, no sale or anything like that. So just feel free to reach out to me. No questions asked.
So we've got a couple of opportunities for people who are on today's call. The Keep Learning is one. So if you enjoyed this content and want similar kinds of content, we have the Modern CPA Success Show. You can see the address where you can find it there on YouTube. So there's additional content that's out there. At the beginning of the webinar, I mentioned our Slack channel. So we have an active Slack channel with CFO community. We've got a lot of people sharing ideas around this. So people from Summit are in this and lots of other firms. We're actually offering 1 month free access for this. So if you just want to check it out and see what's out there, you can do that. A lot of people, like I said, are asking questions, sharing. We're sharing links, information with each other. So it's a great way. Had a lot of small firms, and I think that's a challenge for small firms. Just how do you talk to other CPAs and other firms? So here's an opportunity for you. In addition to that, we are offering a course, the Virtual CFO Playbook course that people can take. So how to land 60,000 per year clients and provide a killer client experience. You can see a lot of different things that are part of this. So it is a course, a 15 module. It's a very thorough course that you can go through. That does come with a free coaching session. You can see there's an ebook, Building the Virtual CFO Firm in the Cloud. I mentioned the Slack channel. That is part of this, as well as we have a pretty well-attended weekly chat between multiple other CPAs who talk about these topics and running firm topics. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that comes into that. And we'll talk about different kinds of software that you can get discounts on. So a few offers that people can take advantage of. I will mention, if you liked hearing a little bit about Summit CPA Group and some of the things that we're doing, we are actually hiring people currently. So if this sounded interesting for you, or you think of someone that it does, we have a careers page at the Summit CPA website. So we would love to engage with people who think that this sounds interesting, both the work that we do and the way that our firm runs. So Stephen and Kelly, thank you guys very much. You can see in the outro kind of the two speakers. You have ways to get in touch with us. You will receive, like I mentioned at the beginning, the CPE information, as well as the slides and everything from the presentation. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Stephen.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks.